Have you ever felt like your prayers just die in the air? That you cry out, wait, and nothing happens? That God is so distant that you don't even know if He hears you anymore? This emptiness weighs heavily, doesn't it? It's that moment when you wake up in the middle of the night with a heavy heart, wanting to understand why everything seems so silent. Why, just when you most need a word, a sign, anything, all that comes is silence. And then you begin to doubt. Has He forgotten me? Have I done something wrong? Does God still care about me? But what if I told you that this silence isn't what it seems? That God speaks to you precisely in those moments when you think He's silent. Yes, it's true. God's silence isn't absence. It's not abandonment. It's actually the beginning of something you can't yet see. Because you see, when everything is noisy, when life is hectic, it's easy to miss God's voice. But when silence arrives, when everything quiets, that's when He prepares your heart to truly listen. God speaks in the silence, not because He is absent, but because it's in the silence that you can finally pay attention. Isaiah 30:15 says something powerful. In quietness and trust shall be your strength. See? Strength doesn't come from noise, immediate answers, or obvious signs. Strength comes from trusting, even when you don't understand, even when it seems like nothing is happening. Because, believe me, something is always happening behind the scenes in your life. What if you knew that, while you're there thinking that God doesn't answer, He's already working on something that will completely transform your story? Do you know what happens when you don't hear from God? It's not that He's inactive, it's that He's too busy working for you. Let me tell you a story that will change the way you view God's silence. Joseph. You know Joseph, right? That young man full of dreams, his father's favorite, who had everything going for him, but suddenly everything falls apart. His brothers throw him into a well. They sell him into slavery. He ends up in Egypt, far from home, far from his family, far from everything he knew. And then Joseph is sold to Potiphar's house. He works hard, is faithful, and is honest. And what does he get in return? False accusation, arrest, years of imprisonment. Imagine Joseph there, in the darkness of that cell, staring at the ceiling and thinking, God, where are you? I dreamed of greatness, of purpose, and now I'm here, forgotten. Was God speaking to Joseph at that moment? It didn't seem like it, did it? But look what Genesis 39:21 says. The Lord was with Joseph. While Joseph thought he was alone, God was weaving every thread of that story, every betrayal, every injustice, every year of silence. All of it was preparing Joseph to become governor of Egypt, to save entire nations from famine, to fulfill the purpose God had designed from the beginning. God guides in silence. He works behind the scenes in things you don't see. When it seems like nothing is happening, it's because He's preparing something so big that it needs time to take shape. How does God transform silence into an answer? He uses every second of waiting to shape you, strengthen you, and position you exactly where you need to be. So when you feel God is silent, remember, He has never stopped working. The question is, will you trust Him until you see results? What if I told you that God already answered you today, but you didn't notice? We expect grand signs, right? A thundering voice from heaven, a gigantic miracle, something impossible to ignore. But God doesn't work that way most of the time. He speaks through circumstances, those little things that seem like coincidences, but aren't. That song that came on the radio just when you needed it. That message from a friend that said exactly what your heart was crying out for. That verse you opened the Bible to, and bam, there was the answer. God speaks when we least expect it because He knows the exact moment you're ready to listen. He doesn't shout, He whispers. And sometimes He uses the simplest everyday situations to show you that He's there, guiding every step. I remember someone once telling me she was jobless, desperate, thinking God had forgotten her. She prayed, cried, waited, nothing. Until one day at the bus stop, a lady started talking to her, out of the blue. And in the middle of the conversation, the lady mentioned a job opening at the company where her son worked. Coincidence? No. God speaks through people. He orchestrates encounters. He puts you in the right place, at the right time, with the right person. Proverbs 16:9 says, "A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps." See, you may not understand the path now, but every step is being guided. Every chance is purposeful. Moments when God reveals himself are scattered throughout your daily life. You just need to learn to see them. So stop waiting for the extraordinary. Look at the ordinary. Because it's there, in the simple, the ordinary, that God speaks in everyday life more often than you might imagine. How many times has God sent you a sign and you didn't even notice? We live on autopilot, We wake up, we work, we eat, we sleep. And in the midst of all this, God is sending us signs. But we're so distracted, so busy, so focused on our problems that we miss them. That strange feeling that you should call someone. That door that closed and you got angry, not realizing God was protecting you from something worse. That person who crossed your path by chance and said something that touched you. Signs that God is speaking are everywhere. The problem isn't that he doesn't speak. The problem is that we aren't paying attention. Discerning God's voice requires spiritual sensitivity. It requires slowing down, silencing the noise of the world, and tuning into the right channel. You know those situations that seem like coincidence? That book someone recommended to you, and when you read it, it was exactly what you were going through? That dream that stayed in your head all day? That restlessness in your heart that won't leave you alone until you do something? That's God. When God wants to show you something, he insists, gently but firmly. And before we continue, if you feel this message touches your heart, subscribe to the channel and like it. This content is made for you to help you hear God more clearly. And when you subscribe, you ensure you'll continue receiving these reflections that can transform your spiritual journey. Coming back, John 10:27 says, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me." Are you Christ's sheep? Then you already have within you the ability to hear his voice. You just need to learn to recognize it amidst the noise. Because God never stops speaking, you need to stop ignoring him. Here's the secret that many people don't understand. Hearing God has nothing to do with the ears. You can be in the loudest service, the most intense praise, the most powerful sermon, and still hear nothing. Why? Because hearing God's voice is a matter of the heart, not of sound. When God speaks to the heart, he speaks to that part of you no noise reaches. He speaks to your conscience, to your spirit, to that place where only you and he have access. And this requires something the modern world hates: inner silence. You can't hear God while your mind is screaming 1,000 worries. You can't feel God's presence while you're anxious, rushing, jumping from one thing to another without stopping to breathe. Spiritual experiences with God don't happen in noise. They happen in stillness. It was in the desert that Moses saw the burning bush. It was on the mountain that Elijah heard the still voice. It was in the early morning alone that Jesus prayed and connected with the Father. Do you see the pattern? God prefers silence because it is in silence that you stop talking and begin to listen. Psalm 46:10 says something so simple yet so difficult to practice. Be still and know that I am God. Be still, stop, breathe. Let the world go by without you for a few minutes. That's when you realize God was speaking all along. You just weren't listening. So how do you truly hear God's voice? Stop. Turn off your phone. Close the door. Sit in silence and let him speak. Not with audible words, but with that inexplicable peace, with that conviction that comes from within, with that certainty that you don't know where it came from, but you know it's real. And when you learn to listen with your heart, everything changes. Now comes the part that hurts. Because sometimes God speaks through what hurts the most. When God speaks in the midst of pain, we don't want to listen. We want him to take away the pain, to solve the problem, to change the situation. But what if pain is the tool he's using to teach you something you would never learn otherwise? Consider Job. A righteous, God-fearing man who lost everything, children, wealth, health. And what did his friends say? You must have sinned. God is punishing you. But that wasn't it. God wasn't punishing Job. He was allowing Job to undergo a process of refinement so profound that in the end, Job said, I used to know you by hearsay, but now my eye has seen you. Job 42:5. Pain revealed God to Job in a way that prosperity never did. And that may be what's happening to you right now. That loss you suffered, that illness that won't go away, that relationship that ended, that disappointment that broke your heart. God didn't cause it, but He can use it. How does God use situations to teach? He takes what the enemy planned to destroy you and transforms it into a tool for growth. He takes pain and molds you through it. Not because He enjoys seeing you suffer, but because He knows that on the other side of this pain, you will emerge stronger, wiser, more like Christ. Romans 8:28 promises, all things work together for good to those who love God. Everything, even the pain, even the suffering, even the things that seem meaningless. God's presence in difficult times isn't to pull you out of the storm. It's to hold you in the midst of it and whisper, I'm here, and you'll come out of this better than you went in. So, if you're going through something difficult right now, know this. God is not silent. He is speaking through this pain, and the message is always the same. I have not abandoned you. Have you ever asked God for something, and He gave you something completely different? It's frustrating, isn't it? You pray for a specific thing, you have faith, you wait, and then the answer comes, but it's not what you asked for. And you're left there, a little confused, a little disappointed, thinking, but God, I asked for A and you gave me B. Why? Because God answers prayers unexpectedly, not to frustrate you, but because He sees what you don't. You ask for bread, He gives you the wheat and teaches you how to make it. Because the process is part of the answer. You ask for an open door, He closes all doors to force you to build a new one. Because what you want isn't always what you need. Think about Paul. He had a thorn in the flesh, something that bothered him deeply. He prayed 3 times asking God to remove it. And do you know what God answered? My grace is sufficient for you, 2 Corinthians 12:9. He didn't remove the thorn, but He gave him the grace to endure. And Paul learned that his weakness was the perfect space for God's strength to shine. Sometimes God speaks through the people you least expect, that advice that came from someone you barely know, that help that came from where you never expected, because God is not limited by your plans. He works with the entire universe. And you know what's even more amazing? When you look back, you realize the best answers you received were the ones you didn't ask for. The doors that closed took you to better places. The people who left your life made room for those who truly belonged there. Isaiah 55:8-9 makes it clear, my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. And thank God for that, because if He answered everything the way we ask, we would be in a much lower place than the one He has prepared. And then comes that moment, that click, that revelation that makes you take a deep breath and say, now I understand. You know, when you look back and see your entire journey, all the silences, all the waiting, all the no's you received, all the closed doors, all the disappointments, and suddenly you realize none of it was in vain. Every piece was in the right place. Every delay was a safeguard. Every no was a redirection. Moments of spiritual revelation are like that. They don't come when you want them. They come when you're ready. And when they do, it's like a curtain opens and you finally see what God was doing all along. Joseph understood this when he said to his brothers, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. Genesis 50:20. It all made sense. The betrayal, the imprisonment, the oblivion, it was all part of a larger plan he couldn't see back then. You'll have that moment too. You'll look back and see God's hand in every detail. You'll realize He never abandoned you. That God speaks when we least expect it, but always at the right time. That every wait had a purpose. That every pain was preparing you for something greater. And when you get to that point, you'll understand God was never silent. You were just learning to listen. God's messages for your heart don't come with a set date. They come when you're mature enough to receive them. And when they come, they change everything. And now, let me tell you something that will warm your heart. God has never, ever left your side. You may not have felt his presence. You may have thought he'd forgotten you. You may have screamed into the void, thinking no one could hear. But he was there. Every tear you shed, he saw. Every sleepless night, he was there. Every time you wanted to give up, he held you. How do you feel God's presence? Sometimes it's not a feeling, it's a certainty. A peace that makes no sense in the midst of chaos. A strength you don't know where it comes from when you should have already collapsed. A door that opens just when you felt like you had no way out. God is present even in the silence. He is in the air you breathe, in the heart that continues to beat, in the faith that, though weak, is still alive within you. Deuteronomy 31:6 promises, he will never leave you nor forsake you. It's not a possibility. It's a certainty. And you know what else? This path you're walking now, however difficult it may be, has the breath of God upon it. He's guiding every step. He's opening paths where none exist. He's preparing you for a future that's still hidden, but will be revealed in due time. You are not alone, never have been, and never will be. God speaks to you not only in words, but in his constant presence. And if you stop right now, take a deep breath and quiet your heart, you will feel it. He is here. So we've reached the end, and perhaps you're realizing that the silence isn't as scary as it was in the beginning, because now you know God's silence is not empty. It is full of purpose, full of preparation, full of love. When the heart learns to listen, even silence becomes an answer. Even waiting becomes strengthening. Even pain becomes growth. You learned that God guides in silence, that he speaks through circumstances, that he uses situations to teach you. You learned that not every answer comes the way you expect, but that it always comes in its own time. And most importantly, you learned that God has never, ever abandoned you. So the next time you feel that emptiness, that silence that tightens your chest, remember this: God is working. It may not seem like it, but he is. And what he is preparing for you is greater than you can imagine. Psalm 27:14 encourages you. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and let your heart take courage. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Waiting is not passive, it is active. It is trusting while you do not see. It is believing while you do not understand. It is standing firm while everything around you is shaking. And you know that promise I made at the beginning, that I would show you something special. So here it is, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. God has plans for you. Plans that don't involve destroying you, but building you up. Plans that don't involve abandoning you, but taking you further than you ever dreamed. And as these plans unfold, as you wait, as you walk, remember, he is speaking. You just need to keep listening. Divine presence in difficult times isn't just to comfort you, it's to transform you. And when you emerge from this season, you'll emerge different, stronger, wiser, closer to God. So breathe, trust, and know that God is speaking to you now, not in audible words, but in renewed hope, in restored faith, in the certainty that you are not alone. And may this silence, which once seemed like the end, now be the beginning of something new in your life. If this message touched your heart, share it with someone who also needs to hear it. Comment below how God has spoken to you, and subscribe to the channel to continue receiving these reflections that will help you walk closer to God. May the peace of the Lord fill your heart, and may you never doubt again. God speaks to you always. You just need to learn to listen. Amen.